Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. And I'm here in New York today, where, of course, there's much talk about the first 200 days of the Trump presidency. Meanwhile, back in the UK, as we head into mid-August, and I guess what we normally know as the city season, and yes, there's been a shark that was caught in Cornwall that appeared on the front page of a newspaper last week, which is traditional stuff, but equally, we simply can't get away, can we, from Brexit, the most important UK political story of our times. And I wonder whether things aren't just becoming a little bit confusing. And I say that because this weekend, the Sunday Telegraph said that UK negotiators were now prepared to pay a £36 billion bill to the European Union to settle the so-called Brexit divorce bill. And of course it's been suggested by Monsieur Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, that unless we paid a substantial bill, and apparently they're asking for 39 billion, so we're kind of getting pretty close at 36 apparently, that we couldn't discuss a proper trade relationship. But of course immediately Downing Street says they don't recognise the figure, and of course conservative Eurosceptics in outrage, including of course one of the show's favourites, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said there was no logic to the figure that was being reported. And just to sort of make things a little bit worse, overnight we see Sir Simon Fraser, a former chief Mandarin at the Foreign Office, saying that actually things really aren't going very well. We've been a bit absent, he said, from the formal negotiations. He was pretty critical. Again, Downing Street fired back and said that it was all going very well, and David Davis, the Brexit secretary, was happy with the negotiations. And we're also waiting, and perhaps this could bring some clarity, I don't know, we're also waiting for the government to publish its position papers on key issues soon. But is this, in effect, too little, too late? Do we deserve better? Do we need our government to tell us very clearly what they intend to do in these negotiations, or are they playing a clever game? Do they have a cunning plan? And is it better, actually, just for sort of things to be released separately to sow confusion in the enemy and thereby, in the end, win a fantastic renegotiation? So I want to know from you, do you want more clarity on the UK's position? And let me know, please, what you think by calling 0345 6060 973. You can, of course, text to 84850, and you can tweet at LBC Farage on LBC, and you can watch me here from a very rainy New York. So let me ask you, James in Farnborough, were you confused by what you were hearing, claim and counterclaim, over the course of the weekend?
Nigel, great pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Good evening.
Listen, I have a theory, and I wanted to know what you think about this.
All right, I'm ready.
The bill, it concerns the bill and the transitional period. As I understand it, the majority of our bill relates to outstanding financial commitments in the EU, some of which is pensions, etc., but the majority is money which has been assigned to bridges and motorways, etc., over the next few years. Now, I think the government is favouring a transitional deal because then they can say we will be paying our fees during the transitional period, and that the transitional deal will be used, that period will be used to run down our financial commitments. So I feel that we'll have a 3 to 5 year transitional period where we'll still be paying our fees, and after that period, the bill will be negligible because our financial commitments will have been run down.
Well, James, No, I think that's a perfectly valid theory, and you may well be right. But wouldn't people have a right to say, well, look, it's perfectly clear, under Article 50 and all the legal guidance notes that we've been given as MEPs and everywhere else, that once we leave, we've left. You know, and yes, of course, there's a negotiation leading up to that point, but once we've left, we have no more obligations. So I think, James, people would say, well, why would we? Why would we give away, 35, 40 billion pounds of UK's taxpayers' money when actually what the referendum said is that we ought to leave?
Yeah, I see that. I see Brexit as a process, and a process which will last sort of 5 to 10 years before we'll start seeing, what's out the other side. But part of that, I feel, is this transitional deal. Now, as a Leaver, I'm not too bothered about the transitional deal. I don't think we need to stress ourselves necessarily with a 2-year deadline, and if we can come to some agreement with the EU. And there's no way they're going to give us a transitional deal where we're enjoying the benefits of what they say is the single market and the customs union while we are not paying a fee. So, I think
James, you
really
may be.
thinking.
You may be a very relaxed Leaver, and yeah, there's an argument that says that the real benefits of Brexit will be felt over the decades to come as we're able to re-establish ourselves globally, and, I get that argument, I understand it, but surely we voted to stop giving away very large sums of money, and these are large sums of money. We're talking about last year, year before that, about 10 billion sterling every single year, so a lot of money, a heck of a lot of hospitals you can build for that kind of money. But equally, we voted to get a grip on our borders. Now, as I've said before on this show, if we go into a transitional arrangement, it may well be 7 or 8 years from the moment that people voted until we actually get back border controls. And I'm not sure, James, as I say, you may be very relaxed about this, but I don't think that most Brexit voters will think this is much short of, frankly, being a bit of a sellout.
I'm not relaxed. I'm actually very stressed. I'm very stressed because of the deadline and the inability. I believe the inability. I don't think the EU have got a chance in hell of sorting anything out in 2 years. And so I think a transitional deal, I think we could do it. I think we could do it with most countries. But when we're trying to sort out our future finances and our future trading relationships with the EU, I don't think the EU are going to be capable of that in 2 years.
Well, they jolly well ought to be in my view. But anyway, thank you. We go to Camber Sands in East Sussex to James. James, what do you think?
Yeah, hi Nigel. It's great to hear you.
Good evening.
It's my first time calling into your show.
Welcome.
I was thinking about this state's experience. They were talking about 100 billion. The EU. They've got long-term plans. We are understandably a net contributor, but there's a lot of the new countries who are net beneficiaries. And I thought the whole project, or part of the idea of the EU, was to, help out the poorer countries to bring us all on the level playing field. Now, these plans are already in place, and they must be desperate for the money. And, I think that, despite what everyone says, we are a rich country, and, they must really need the money, and it would help us in the negotiations by, offering this fig leaf. I know it's a massive fig leaf.
Well, there may be...
It's a fig leaf nonetheless.
All negotiations are a matter of give and take, and perhaps that is maybe evidence that says the government shouldn't tell us too much about their strategy, because this needs to be done behind closed doors. There are an awful lot of different strings that need to be pulled together. You could make that case. But James, when it comes to honouring our commitments, playing this fairly, if you like, the EU has a round of 7-year spending projects and proposals, and the current one runs out in the middle of 2020. So if we want to be generous in these negotiations, what we say is we honour, up until that period in the middle of 2020, something we'd previously signed up to. Beyond that, the only commitment that morally we could be bound by are the pensions of about 20,000 people who have been civil servants at the European Commission, members of the European Parliament or other EU institutions. And frankly, rather than giving the European Union money, I would have thought, James, what we could do is we could take those pensioners onto UK books and make this as clean a break as we possibly can. So
can I just ask, Nigel?
Yeah.
There's something you mentioned there which I haven't heard anyone say. That we've got commitments up to 2020, but what are those commitments? What does that add up to?
Well, at the moment, as I say, we have been paying net between 8 and 10 billion a year for the last few years. So that's what our commitment has been. So here's me saying that maybe we do owe, because of what we've agreed to, another 7 or 8 billion pounds or whatever it may be. But beyond that, I can't see that we need to give a penny piece. And I think also, James, when it comes to the trade negotiation, look, they sell us a lot more motor cars and a lot more goods and a lot more products than we sell them. And I sort of worry. I worry perhaps that we haven't got the collective confidence coming from the leadership of our country. I worry that we're not recognising in these negotiations that actually we've got a very good hand. We just need to play it better.
Yeah, well, it makes sense to me then. I mean, if we're committed up till 2020, and it's call it 8 billion, then
Yep.
3/8, 24, plus a little bit extra for the pensions. Maybe it's another billion, say. Then that sounds like a figure that people could understand. But
Yes.
when they say 36, I think it'd be fairer if they say, right, it's 36 because of X, Y, and Z. From what you've told me, it'd be a reasonable.
Well, I
thing
asked.
for them to
I mean,
ask
James, I asked Barnier, I've challenged him 2 or 3 times now in the European Parliament and said, look, whether this figure is 50 billion euros or 100 billion euros or whatever it is, surely you've just plucked this out of the air. Can you give us some justification for how you've reached any of these figures? And the one thing that he did say was that 100 billion euros was too much, and I was at least a little bit encouraged by that. But so far, he hasn't produced any evidence why we need to give a large sum of money for Brexit, and I cannot see we're not bound by Article 50 to any future obligations after we've left. I think my position actually is very generous in saying, look, I think we should fulfil our obligations up until mid-2020, but beyond that, James, frankly, I think enough is enough. Thank you very much. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. It's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Matt Fry on LBC.
If you're a commuter and you were heading to Waterloo Station this morning, you would have expected an almighty chaos. In fact, it was remarkably smooth. Mark Khan, he's the chief executive of Network Rail. Do you think you deserve that bonus of £50,000 when consumer confidence in the commute is at an all-time low?
I don't have to justify my bonus. I mean, that's decided by independent executives. We're delivering the biggest railway upgrade in anybody's lifetime. It's a massive programme of £100 million of investment every single week.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Matt Fry every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
You can earn more with a degree.
And you can get a degree in just 2 years with a course at GSM London.
Degrees are awarded by Plymouth University. And if you don't have a formal qualification, you can start on our foundation year.
Places are available for September at our Greenford and Greenwich campuses.
Enroll now. Text GSM to 66777.
Or visit gsmlondon.ac.uk.
GSM London.
Have bold dreams.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
Summer's here. Ice creams, barbecues and sundowners. Typical English days out. And the perfect time of year to replace that old boiler. At Swale Heating, our expert engineers can install a brand new A-rated Worcester Bosch boiler, which comes with a warranty of up to 10 years and a year's free cover for the whole central heating system. Subject to survey, conditions apply. So you and your family won't be left in the cold this winter. Visit swaleheating.com for a quote today. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Hi, I'm Michael Owen, and I know what it's like to be injured. If you've been injured and it's not your fault, you need to speak to Gowing Law. Text WIN to 80800 and Gowing Law will do the rest.
Thanks, Michael. If you've been injured on the road or at work, Gowing Law could help you win thousands in compensation. We can tell you instantly what you might be owed. Find out right now and text WIN to 80800.
So win with Gowing. Text WIN to 80800.
Divorce can be expensive. It affects your finances, assets, home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. It's probably one of the toughest times you'll ever go through. Cordell & Cordell understands these issues and helps men maximize their roles in their children's lives. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Save Save up to £180 over a year in the BT summer sale. Get unlimited BT broadband for £24.99 a month on a 12-month contract, £9.99 up front. Plus, you can have BT Sport, now free for 12 months. So don't miss out on saving up to £180 over a year, because the BT summer sale ends 15th of August. Visit bt.com/sale to join BT today.
Prices and content may change. £52.99 a month from month 13. Recontracting required. Savings versus previous prices. Paid direct debit. Terms apply.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So it's been a rather confusing weekend. Reports coming out in the Sunday Telegraph that the government are going to be happy to pay £36 billion as part of our leaving bill. It's been suggested by one or two people calling in tonight that perhaps if we're entering into extended transitional arrangements, this explains why the figure might be as high as it is. We're told, in turn, that the EU themselves are demanding 39 billion sterling, or 40, as the newspapers have rounded it up to be, but the Prime Minister's office say they don't recognise the figures at all. And into all of this was plunged an expert overnight, Sir Simon Fraser, who I mentioned earlier, a former chief mandarin at the Foreign Office, who gave a big interview on the BBC last night. He said we'd been a bit absent from negotiations, and he said that the negotiations themselves have not begun particularly promisingly. Now, this was all over the BBC website this morning and elsewhere in the media, but what, of course, we weren't told about Sir Simon Fraser, who I'm sure is a wonderful fellow, is that he worked in the past for Peter Mandelson. He was seconded and worked for the European Commission in Brussels. He was an absolutely ardent Remainer, even publicly speaking out in the week before the referendum, saying what a disaster it would be if left. So it's all well and good to get people with titles and grand positions, but it's quite useful, I think, to know perhaps what their background on this issue is. And on your texts and tweets I get, if the PM doesn't understand what the 39 billion figure represents, then how can she ensure we negotiate in the right way? Blind leading the blind, springs to mind, says Ollie. Nigel, we need to know exactly what is happening with this country. We are fed up with no definite answers. That's what Kathy says. And Carolyn says to me, how dare you mention building hospitals? I did it rather deliberately, actually, Carolyn. How dare you mention building hospitals with that money when you were exposed as a liar on that score during the referendum? Well, Carolyn, I never mentioned it once in the referendum, but Boris might have done. And Harry says, I don't understand how or why they regard our membership as a marriage and in effect want a divorce settlement. No one marries 27 people. And Peter says, let the EU keep asking and asking for more until we turn round and say no deal. Steve in Mill Hill, does there come a point when we have to say no deal, or does it make sense to pay over a lot of money to give us a long transitional withdrawal from the EU?
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
How are you? Good evening.
I'm well, thank you.
Good. As far as the amount we pay to leave is concerned, isn't it rather akin to working out your notice? So that eventually, when you actually leave, you don't owe anything, nor are you owed anything. But that's not the point I wanted to talk to you about. The point
well, actually, Steve, just let me just respond to that very quickly, because you put that very, very well. Actually, the notice period is Article 50. So we've triggered Article 50. There'll be a 2-year period at the end of which we're supposed to be leaving, and as part of serving our notice, we will have contributed net somewhere between 16 and 20 billion sterling. So I think, in any sense, the British government has followed, I think, the honourable route. I just worry whether it's the weak route. Steve, carry on.
Okay. Before the referendum, I was lucky enough to get a ticket to listen to Yanis Varoufakis.
Yes.
Owen Jones was the moderator. It was a church in Islington somewhere, but that doesn't matter.
For those that don't know, Steve, one sec. For those that don't know, Yanis Varoufakis was the guy who became the finance minister of Greece. He was a university professor, kind of Marxist professor, hard left professor, very bright, and few of us can forget the photograph of him walking up Downing Street to go and meet the Prime Minister wearing a donkey jacket. So that's who Varoufakis is. Steve, carry on.
Okay, he spent the first hour and a half giving Mrs. Merkel a kicking, just Mrs. Merkel. Mm-hmm. Some of the things he said, I was aghast. And then he predicted how the negotiation would play out. Now I know he's said that in other areas as well. But it's not only that night. It is horribly correct. They're taking us for fools. They are playing this game perfectly, and we seem to be inept. We seem to be struggling to reply.
Steve, do you think the right strategy? Do you think the right strategy is for the government to say very clearly, this is what we're trying to get you do, this is where we're prepared to go, or is it cleverer for the government to say nothing and perhaps to allow a series of false stories to be spread as part of, a very clever, cunning negotiating strategy?
Only if that they last longer than the next election, because they are sowing the seeds of dissent. And and you can't rule out an election as we stand today. There might be an election in 3, 6, 12 months' time. And if they keep going on and on and on about making us seem like fools, then if there were to be a rerun of this referendum, I think that we'd lose.
OK. Would you like more clarity from Mrs May about what Brexit's all about?
I'd like to know what a fallback position is. I'd like to know where the red line is.
Yep. OK, Steve. No, I don't think you're alone in that. I thank you. Ade in Gravesend, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. So, tell me.
Lovely to talk to you, first-time caller.
Well, we're very welcome. So, Ade, are the government getting this right? Should they keep their cards really close to their chest in this negotiation, or should we have a bit more clarity from them?
I think you just hit the nail in the head. Keep it close to their chest. One. Secondly, the media in this country are not really helping matters. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you for this, because you want Theresa May to spill the beans, and then what? I mean, you are busy. You've been in business for so long, Nigel. Mm-hmm. You know very well that you don't lay all your cards on the table. So what is good? See, I'm from Nigeria, a British guy. I'm a card-carrying member of Conservative. Yep. I'm a very close Thatcherite, and I love you, Nigel, as well, because when you're in UKIP, I believed in what you were doing very seriously. The last thing I want is to have a government that behaves as the press, especially the British press, wants it to behave.
Right. Now, so don't dance the press's tune and play the clever game and keep your cards close. Yeah.
The British have always been good in business that way. I mean, I don't know where. I mean, for God's sake, you control over a quarter of the world before. How did you do it?
Mm. Well, Ade, I completely understand your point. It's a perfectly valid point of view, all of which leaves me gasping when Michael Gove goes across to Denmark and says, when we get our territorial waters back, we don't have the fishing capacity and we don't have the processing capacity to deal with all those fish, so you'll still be allowed to come into our waters and catch as much as you want. My argument with them is not so much about whether they should keep their cards close to their chest or not. They just don't appear to be going into this with any self-confidence about the strength of our position. Ade, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Loads of you wanting to get in on this. We shouldn't make our position clear on Brexit. I get on Twitter. If we do, the EU will take advantage and try to bleed us dry, says Patrick. So why on earth is Mr Gove giving away fish before we've even properly started? What people need to remember, there are member countries who contribute nothing, says Philip. Well, in fact, there are lots of member countries who are receivers of money and have been for many, many years. Just pay lip service to the EU, sign nothing, wait for it all to expire, then do what we want, says D. Nigel, I agree. We should honour our commitments with the EU up to 2020, as you say, and it's a great idea to transfer those assets to the UK pension services. Well, it wasn't as much assets I was talking about as liabilities, but I would have thought that the 20,000 or so pensioners should come off the European Union's books and be dealt with by the UK parliamentary scheme, or whatever it may be. Mike in Bridgend, good evening. Quite a lot of callers telling me, Mike, that actually the canny way for the government to play this is to tell us nothing and to do it all quietly and cleverly.
Well, I just think that that's all well and good, but like I say, if they're not asking for 30 billion or 34 billion in addition to the money we owe up till 2020, are they? They're just asking that's included in everything, isn't it?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's the truth of it. We simply don't know, and I think after this weekend, Mike, even though, as I say, it's supposed to be the silly season, but after this weekend, I think we're just all very confused as to what the truth really is.
Well, I work in financial services. There's very clever people called actuaries and accountants. Well, actuaries, for example. And you know, if you actually employed actuaries to actuarially determine our liabilities to the European Union up to 2020, and maybe any ongoing commitments before then, suitably qualified actuaries could give you a specific figure. What I just find is amazing is the way figures are just bandied around. If somebody says that you owe, here a cert must prove. If somebody says you owe 34 billion, then they need to bring you like a balance of accounts, like a statement of accounts. If I went and did some building work for somebody and I did an invoice and it was just blank and I handed it over and I said, right, I want £30,000 for doing your building work, you know, nobody would accept that. So what we need is a detailed invoice which we can then dispute or look at. Has anybody even seen one of those?
Do you know, Mike, that's exactly what I've asked Monsieur Barnier for in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and he's produced absolutely diddly squat, nothing. So I do wonder. I mean, I understand the argument that it's a complex package that David Davis has to put together, but I would like at least a bit of leadership from our government, and that, I think, is what is lacking, Mike.
The danger is if you keep attacking the people doing negotiating, there's a load of people waiting in the wings. For example, Vince Cable is referring to people who want Brexit as, potential jihadis.
Oh, jihadis. Yes, we're jihadis. I thought the arrogance of the leader of the Liberal Democrats, or the new leader of the Liberal Democrats, basically showing his total contempt for democracy and for the views of ordinary people. I don't think, Vince Cable, that's going to do your party an awful lot of good. Mike from Bridgend, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Lots of first-time callers in this first half an hour. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC, live from New York. It is now 7:30 in the UK, and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
Jeremy Corbyn says he condemns the violence by all sides in Venezuela, but is refusing to criticise the country's president. The Labour leader is under pressure to denounce Nicolas Maduro after previously praising the country's political system. A senior judge has approved a care plan for a suicidal teenage girl. Sir James Mumby, who's the president of the High Court's Family Division, had previously said there'd be blood on our hands if a safe placement was not found for her. The RMT union says talks with Govia Thameslink have stalled over the driver-only trains dispute on Southern Railway, but its General Secretary says he does believe the dispute can be resolved. LBC weather dry across Scotland and Northern Ireland this evening and overnight. Showers elsewhere, a low of 14 degrees. Tomorrow, those showers continuing across England and Wales. Sunny spells for Scotland and Northern Ireland, a high of 21 degrees.
LBC Travel. Well, starting off in Hertfordshire, the M25 is crawling clockwise between junction 22 for London Coney and 23 for South Mims after an accident which has closed the inside lane of 3. In London, the A200 Creek Road is closed westbound for emergency gas work between Greenwich Church Street and Bardsley Lane, leaving bad queues on both approaches. Into Warwickshire now, the M42 is queuing northbound between junction 9 for the M6 toll and 10 for the A5. There was an accident there. It's now been moved onto the hard shoulder. In Somerset, the M5 is blocked northbound between 21 for Weston-super-Mare and 20 for Clevedon. That's to recover a collision and a fuel spillage. It's been brought to a standstill on the approach. Onto the rails now. South West Trains are running a severely reduced service to and from London Waterloo tonight as the engineering works continue. There are also additional delays of around half an hour on services through Clapham Junction after a problem with the signals. LBC Travel, I'm Andy Lake.
This is LBC.
This is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board today's flight. As we're currently behind schedule, we're going to skip all the pre-flight checks and just proceed with takeoff. I've given the tyres a kick and I think we've got enough fuel to get there, and the oil warning light hasn't come on yet, so buckle up and enjoy the flight.
You wouldn't fly without the proper checks, so why drive without them? Highways England recommends you check your tyres, fuel and oil before every long journey. For more information on vehicle safety checks, search Think.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
At Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, we understand how important it is to choose the right van for your business. So not only does the Volkswagen Transporter have city emergency braking as standard, meaning you're less likely to be involved in an accident, it also now comes with 2 free services and is available on contract hire for just £229 a month. That's right, you're in van heaven. Search Volkswagen Transporter to find out more. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, working with you. £1,374 initial rental and 20% VAT. Business users only until 1st of October 2017. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicle Financial Services.
Moving house. Nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
How about a bit of good news? The Treasury today tell us, and it is related to our debate tonight, they tell us that our net payments to the European Union have fallen to the lowest level in 5 years. The net payment, according to the Treasury, for the year 2016 to 17 is only £156 million a week. That is 8.1 billion sterling. That's down from about £10 billion during the course of the year before that. So that is, well, is it good news? It's still a huge amount of money. But, of course, the controversy around this, and I did read out a very charming tweet that I got earlier, is it's all over the Vote Leave campaign of the £350 million a week, which led to such an enormous row. How does this work? It works that the UK has a gross contribution, but from that gross contribution there is taken a rebate which takes into account the fact that we do quite a lot of business outside of Europe for various tariff reasons. Let's not complicate ourselves. We then finish up with a net of rebate figure of about £12 billion, and about £4 billion comes back into the United Kingdom, leaving us with a net figure of 8. And it was a huge row. Certainly after the Brexit result, that the £350 million a week was thought to be inaccurate. It just would have been easier to use the net figure. The net figure is down. Folks, we're only paying them £8 billion a year. Isn't that a cause for great celebration? I'm going to ask Tolga in Enfield whether she agrees with that.
Hi there. I do agree with that. And firstly, it's a pleasure speaking with you, Nigel.
Good evening.
In respect of the other thing was, being in the EU for so long, I was quite scared. I mean, it almost looked like we have forgotten about democracy being in the EU for so long. I mean, you are either inside of the EU or you are out. And that was said by Donald Tusk himself. And the public, I just want to say this, sorry, and the public knew what we were voting for in respect of the biased free movement of people, getting our waters back, making our own laws. We knew all of it. And the £36 billion, another reason we left the EU is to stop paying the European political union substantial amount of money. And
so does this, I mean, tell me, does this make you angry? You know, when you read a report, albeit it's been denied, but when you read a report that the government might be prepared to pay £36 billion, does that make you as a voter angry?
Of course it makes sense, because, I mean, we voted for Brexit, and it was black or white. It was either vote Brexit or vote Remain.
Yep.
And there was no, oh, we might vote Brexit, or we could maybe pay £36 billion if you were. There was nothing like that. We knew what we were voting for.
So what do you want, Tolga? Is it better leadership you want? Is it more vision you want from our government?
Well, well, just goes to show you, we need a true conservative leader who believes in our country and will deliver Brexit. And
right.
I think you know what name I'm thinking of as well.
Would it be a double-barrelled name chap who represents a Somerset constituency? Yes, it would be. So you're part of Mogmentum, Tolga, are you?
Yeah, of course, yeah. How can you not be? I mean...
well, very easily not be, as well as can be. But so what is the one thing about Rees-Mogg that says to you he'd be the right leader?
The guy's really, really intelligent, and he knows all his facts. He knows what he's talking about, and you just can't debate with him, really, when it's just black and white with him, isn't it?
Well, very good. Tolga, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Stephen says to me on Facebook, walk away now. No dealing with the mafia EU. Walk away as soon as possible. Sounds like one of my speeches over there. We're next going to the little fishing port of Dungeness in Kent to speak to Jonathan. Jonathan, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right, but I'm just a bit confused. I don't know what our government really wants to do in these negotiations.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? I think my feeling is, in the first instance, I'd just like to pay some money to get the hell out of there. We need to be gone. If that's the quickest way, then so be it. But we might.
Right. So it's okay to pay a price if it gets us out quickly, yeah?
Yes, that's my first point. I think equally, we should actually suggest that, other than Britain, only 3 EU countries actually managed to achieve their NATO spending target. So perhaps the 36 billion or whatever it is should be reappropriated to NATO funds to make up for Europe's failings in that area, given it's basically the Americans and the British that have been defending them since 1945.
Well, this is a big point. I'm going to be in Washington tomorrow, Jonathan, where we're going to be analysing the first 200 days of Donald Trump as president. And, of course, this point about NATO members not putting their weight and paying their way is one of the key points that he's making. But hey, we can't be prepared. I mean, we shouldn't be expected. The United Kingdom should not be expected to pay the NATO fees for other countries, surely.
No, but I think it would just help if we sort of reinforced that fact that, you know, most of Europe, apart from Greece, Estonia and Poland, the rest of them have been sitting back for the last almost 20 years under the American umbrella, the British umbrella. You know, it's only ever our forces that put their lives on the line. The French don't go anywhere. The Germans certainly don't go anywhere. Most of them are pretty hopeless.
Yeah, but Jonathan, it's a slightly separate debate. I mean, I get the point, and we will talk about NATO tomorrow on this programme. I absolutely promise you, because it is a very, very important point about Trump's relationship with the whole of Europe in many, many ways. But Jonathan, do you think? I mean, are you one of these people that thinks that actually the government doesn't need to tell us what they're up to? They should just play their cards very close to their chest and get the best possible deal?
Yeah, they absolutely should. However, I'm a true conservative my entire life, but there is not the right team there to do it, sadly.
And tell me, have you had any comments from your neighbours in Dungeness about Michael Gove's comments on fisheries last week?
Not as yet, but then I haven't been to the pub yet, actually.
Right. Well, I'm sure when you go to the Pilot Inn, which I know well, as I do many other pubs, you'll get a fair opinion. Jonathan, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Sandy says on Facebook, the mistake made was involving diplomats in any talks because, by their very nature, they are appeasers and don't have the backbone to stand up for this country. Well, Sandy, it's certainly an opinion, but there may be many in the civil service who are doing their damnedest best for this country. Surely they can't all be rotters, as Sandy suggests. Jack in Nottingham, good evening. Do you want more clarity from the government, or are they clever to play their cards close to their chest?
I think that they're clever to play them close to the chest. However, I feel like they've told us a bit too much already. They're already making us feel in dark, never mind the rest of the European Union.
Right.
I just can't help but feel like no matter what they tell us, we're not going to be happy as a nation anyway, because we just wanted a clean break. I just don't think it's as simple as that. I think, like, I can't help but feel like they made it sound like it was as simple as we'll go back in, they need us more than we need them. And yet we've gone in limping. We've almost gone in not as a full nation because she called an election and she couldn't even do that, never mind.
I mean, is it your feeling that general election has really damaged her and the UK government's negotiating position in Brussels?
Yes, completely changed my opinion on it, if I'm completely honest. I voted leave. That was my decision. I voted leave.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I'd always been Tory. Then, the second that it came to the election, she was absolutely shocking. She couldn't help. She went for this Iron Lady sort of front on, and then it just didn't work for her. And that just showed me how many people started voting for Labour.
Yes, it did, but
if it wasn't for the UKIP votes, I don't even think she'd have got that many.
Well, you may be right. You may be right. And Jack, as a Leave voter last year, you know, if there was a referendum again tomorrow, would you vote Leave still? Would you do so with more strength, less strength?
If I could vote again tomorrow, I would vote Leave. However,
You would?
if there was a general election, I'd have probably voted Labour again, because that's how much she's completely thrown me off.
Wow.
Now.
Yeah, well, Jack, you're not alone. There's quite a lot of people out there that are feeling like that. It's at what age are you, Jack?
I'm only 21.
You're 21, so you're effectively, because I mean, about 2/3 of your age group did vote Remain, didn't they?
Yeah, yes, they did. See, I'm against that completely. And where I came from, my background originally, well, I'm a fully qualified electrical engineer, and I came out of that. But when you was working in the factories, you was going working on compressors, most of the people you dealt with were foreign anyway, and that's because the English just don't want to work in there. There's nothing against the foreign workers, nothing at all. But I feel like as a nation, we've just allowed too many people in there, and we've got lazy because someone needs to do these jobs, so they've just lowered the wage.
Well, that's probably right. Listen, Jack, thank you very much indeed for your call. And Barbara in Edinburgh, good evening.
Oh, good evening. Good to have you back, Nigel.
So I've been away, all right. I've been in Cornwall, yes.
You had a holiday.
I love Cornwall. I mean, I must admit, it does rain a bit, but hey-ho. It's a lovely place to go. So, Barbara, you've got a quick point for me, I believe.
Yes, well, I think that, as I said, I think I phoned once before and I couldn't get you, and I spoke to Clive Bull. When you can't arrive at the figure, you surely have to show your workings and how that's arrived at. Now, Theresa May well be aware, you know, her crew may be aware of all the workings and have just don't want to divulge it, but just want to say that it's not a figure they recognise. So I don't know how
But the trouble is... But the trouble is, Barbara, however Theresa May plays this, you've got a cabinet that is briefing against each other and fighting for different outcomes. That's the real problem here, Barbara, isn't it?
Of course it is. Oh, yes, I'm totally agreement with that. And I sometimes wonder which country's side people are on, because when people criticise us, our own people criticise our country and say that we're not, we're not making them happy in the EU. I don't understand that.
Well, Barbara, there's a lot we don't understand. I thank you very much indeed for your call, and pleased you got through. Clive Bull's loss. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. You can watch me live by going to LBC's Facebook page, but right now, it's 7:45 in the UK, and time for the break.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Social care is in such crisis that 4 in 10 homes are failing inspections, with thousands of residents at risk. How can we make sure that care homes do care?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
You have to see Lola in her tiny sunglasses. This is us at the park. Look at the way she's sleeping in this one. And here she is digging up a bone.
Pets, we positively love them. For those times they're feeling rough, get pet insurance from Pets in a Pickle. Get a free no-obligation quote at petsinapickle.co.uk.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
New Sky Sports is here. So now all our Sky TV customers can get our brand new channel dedicated to the Premier League for £18 a month. With 126 live games and a new weeknight debate show. Exciting, eh, Gary? If you don't have Sky TV, bundles start from £22 a month. Search New Sky Sports today to get our new Premier League channel. Cancellation requires 31 days notice. New Sky TV customers, £20 setup fee, 18-month contract.
Fancy the thrill of being a city trader, but don't know your footsie from your Forex? Well, now you can gamble on something you really do understand by betting on Football Index, the football trading exchange. Simply buy and sell top players on Football Index for real cash. Trade up to £500 risk-free. And if you don't love Football Index, we'll give you your money back. Go to footballindex.co.uk or download the app and become a football trader today. Over 18s and new customers only. Deposit required. Other terms apply. Gamble responsibly.
Because you remained calm when my dress wouldn't do up. Because you were the only one who remembered to bring confetti. Because you knew I'd cry and had a tissue ready. Thank you for being the best friend. Love, Sarah.
Zing Flowers. Beautiful hand-tied bouquets delivered the very same day when ordered before 12 noon. Visit zingflowers.com. Zing Flowers. Amazing every time.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show, live from New York. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
I think we're all pretty confused as to what the government's real Brexit strategy is and how much they're prepared to pay for it. Everyone contradicting each other over the course of the weekend. Reports the government was prepared to pay £36 billion, and the Prime Minister then saying that her office did not recognise the figure. On Twitter, anonymously, I get, admit it, lad, we're not leaving the EU. The intention is to scare us for 2 years until the public beg to stay in. I'm sorry. Whoever sent that? I don't think you understand the British voter. I honestly, genuinely and sincerely believe that if there is an attempt made to try and frighten the life out of British voters and any attempt in Parliament to keep us in, I think we would rebel in a pretty remarkable way. Owen in Colchester, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Good to speak to you. I was a Remain voter.
Yes.
And yes, I do think it's frustrating, the total lack of any plan, whether in or out of the EU. I'm interested to know, because you kind of come across as a supporter of hard Brexit.
No, Owen, hang on. I don't support hard Brexit or soft Brexit. I support democratic Brexit. I support what we very clearly voted for, which was to leave the European Union, to leave its single market, and to get back running our own country. That's it.
Right. In terms of tariff-free access, what is your view, and what would you pay to have tariff-free access? Because I know you work in the banking industry, and obviously for you...
Well, I was actually in the commodities business, metals business, but look, tariff-free access of itself is, of course, a good and a useful thing. However, the tariff-free access that we have with the European Union comes with a membership bill which we shouldn't celebrate too much, appears, according to the Treasury, if they're right, to have gone down to just £8 billion a year, and a whole load of legislation that stops us being more competitive than our next-door neighbours. So I would actually argue, Owen, that right now, any benefit we get from tariff-free access is more than taken away by the membership fee, the excessive regulation, and stopping us from trading across the world. Do I want, Owen, to come out of these talks, ideally with tariff-free access? Yes. And I do ultimately think that German industry and French industry will demand it too. But would I be prepared for us to give away vast sums of money to do it? Absolutely not.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right, thank you very much.
Owen, tell me, as a Remainer, how would you vote if the referendum was held again tomorrow?
Well, it wasn't a referendum on joining the EU. I voted, I would probably still vote Remain, although accepting we are leaving. But essentially, I would probably still subject to reform vote, remain.
Yeah, OK, listen, Owen from Colchester, thank you very much indeed. Seb in Manchester, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
So do we need some more leadership, some more clarity, or are they perhaps playing a very cunning game, Seb?
I'm not sure. I think in terms of the 36 billion, I think it doesn't really make sense from a negotiating perspective to offer them that, because so far they haven't really shown, the EU haven't shown that they're willing to give anything. So if we were to offer them 36 billion, what's to stop them turning around and saying, OK, we'll give you a very terrible trade deal, and if you want a better one, you need to give us more money.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I honestly, whatever lack of confidence I might have expressed, I do not believe that David Davis is just going to give away 36 billion in return for nothing. I just don't think that he would do that under any circumstances. But, you know, the question is, would even, as I discussed with the last caller, a very polite Remainer, which makes a nice change, but, you know... how much are we prepared to pay for tariff-free access, Seb? I guess that's the question, really.
Well, I mean, I think for me, the price for tariff-free access is zero. I mean, I don't think if we are going to negotiate with the EU on tariff-free access, if they are going to insist that we must accept the four freedoms, etc., that is a red line for me. And if they're going to do that, I would say, well, sorry, we're not having tariff-free access. We're going to do Canada or Japan or something like that.
So actually, why waste potentially not just the time up until March 2019, but maybe for years after in transitional arrangements? Why waste all this time if they're never ever going to put this on the table? That's really what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, I think in terms of getting at the top, what we need to do is assuming that we're going to be leaving customs union, what we need to do is do a charm campaign across the UK, because you know whatever deal we get with the European Union, I'm assuming we're going to be doing WTO terms for everyone else. So we need to be getting our borders ready, getting our businesses ready, and saying, okay, we're ready for WTO, and to implicitly signal to the EU that we are ready to leave, regardless of what happens. Because right now we are signaling to them that we have no plan. Even though we're signaling to them that we don't.
Any business negotiation, you know, if you go into that meeting and you're the customer, you know, and you're buying product off a company, they need to know that you're prepared to walk out of that room and cancel all the contracts unless you get a better deal. And that's exactly where we need to be. Seb, I thank you very much indeed for your call. It's up to the European negotiators to explain what they think we have to pay for. It would be madness to show your cards too early. Nigel, how long do we have to go on with this charade before the threat of no deal kicks in? We are only going to get a bad deal, so let's show them what we mean by getting up and walking out, says Paul in St Neots. Well, that's quite a lot of people do actually support that position. And certainly, the caller we had earlier, who mentioned Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, he said it's a complete waste of time to negotiate with these people. They will never, ever listen. Tina says to me on Facebook, in terms of Brexit, it's not hard or soft, it's in or it's out. Sentiments, of course, Tina, that I would agree with. I wonder what Nick in Kings Lynn thinks. Good evening.
Could you reiterate your comment about Vince Cable you said earlier on about not recognising democracy?
Yes, I think that when Vince Cable said yesterday that he treated people who, when they were asked in an opinion poll, you know, would they still vote for Brexit? And even if there was a threat that economically it might be bad for the country, a lot of people said, yes, we would still vote for Brexit. And Vince Cable compared them to jihadis. And what he was doing was he was quite willfully belittling and talking down to people who were turned out in a referendum to vote on a variety of issues, but the main one being that of sovereignty, that of governing our own country and making our own rules. And I think that Cable doing that basically showed contempt. Yes, that is my view.
Well, I'm no great supporter of Vince Cable, but he's hardly a raving left-winger, is he? He's a man of the city. He was an ex-oil baron.
Of course, he's a corporatist. He's a corporatist, Nick. Exactly. And we know that the bigger the company, the bigger the corporation, the more likely they are to be hand in glove with the European Union. And I just think, look, it's all well and good. You know, Vince Cable, you know, economist at Shell, and he's done many things in his life. But I would say to Vince Cable, you know, do not insult people just because they voted for a different way to you in the referendum and they have a different set of priorities.
Nigel, my point is that playtime is over now. We had that city referendum on a simple choice. There was no details in the referendum. We're now back to reality. It's all right you coming on every night banging against the government, not having confidence or leadership. They've got to deal with the realities. And every day exposes how untenable this Brexit's going to be, whether you're pro-Europe or not. All this talk about transition and everything else, because it's about migration. It's just it is totally impractical. You say, all right, we pay a big bill of $36 billion to get out. Do you think that's obviously going to be the end of it?
Well, I mean, the point I'm making is frankly, Paul, tariff-free access is fine. It's the only possible benefit you could argue we'd had, it seems to me, from EU membership. But, we are where we are. Clearly, you're not happy with it. Paul says to me on Facebook, did we contribute to the EU government buildings, etc.? Will the EU buy back our share of all these buildings? Well, and not to mention our money in the European Investment Bank, too. No, they're not paying us. They're asking us for a thumping great big bill. The trouble is, we don't know what our government's real position is. I do understand that in negotiation, keeping your cards close to your chest, trying to put a whole series of things together at once is something that doesn't necessarily need to be put in the public domain. But the real problem here is we've got a cabinet who are briefing different things on Brexit at different stages, often in a very contradictory way. What we've got here, frankly, is a lack of leadership. Mrs May simply isn't in control. That's the problem. I'm back tomorrow. I'll be in Washington, D.C. We'll be talking about Trump's first 200 days. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. So at 9, the Consumer Hour. This week we're looking at